We're back here on Sun Devil Extra. Graham Rossini will join us again in the final segment today, but now we're joined by the head coach of the Arizona State Triathlon team, Cliff English. And if you're not familiar with Sun Devil Triathlon, let me break it down really simply for you. They're a dynasty. They have won the national title every year since 2016, 2020, of course, not counting because of the pandemic. But, Coach, it's the most titles anyone's ever had in USA Triathlon. How do you keep your athletes and yourself hungry for more?
Well, first off, thanks for having me again.
Yeah, of course.
Always great to be on this show. You know, just consistency. You know, I'd say that's the biggest thing. You know, we love what we're doing. We're having fun. We try to keep it fun. It is interesting. You're right. Like each year, you know, we're like, oh, wow, do we do a special talk? Do we talk about pressure? You know, and we do talk. We're very open about that. But at the same time, we try to downplay it a little bit on this team and just be like, look, let's focus on doing our job well. And I really believe it's doing the little things well, you know, day in, day out, just being consistent. And then it kind of works out. You know, it's very, very simple, but I don't like to overthink things, you know, and it's like you know, if we keep people healthy, keep the team healthy, having a good time, then it's going to go, you know, pretty smooth. You know, I've always really believed very basic principles. I kind of call it the Triple H. Although it kind of dates me a little bit, Triple H back in the WWE days. But healthy, happy, hungry. If you have that with your athlete, then you kind of, when you're feeling good, you're rested, you're doing well, and you're having a good time, you kind of feel like you can go that extra little bit and dig deep and be really hungry for it, you know? So that's what we kind of try to really keep in the team. Like I said, you know, just good hard work, but keep it light. And, you know, we're still rolling, still doing it, so it seems to be working.
It might sound cliche, but I want you to elaborate a little bit on that Triple H, because I think it's such an intimidating sport for an outsider.
Yeah.
You know, how do you keep training fun and light? Like, what is that process like?
You know, it could be just a good example last week. You know, one of our swim sessions, we're 5 days a week we swim, but one of them we just threw in like relays. So all of a sudden we're breaking a team into either 2 groups of 5 or 3 groups of 4, and, you know, having relay races. So they're getting, you know, some really hard swimming. Some of them are actually setting like a personal best in like 100 or a 50, that kind of thing. But you're having fun and you're doing it for your teammate, you know? So it's still hard work, but it just breaks it up, you know? So then it's sometimes changing up, you know, your bike route, changing up a different location. So all of a sudden, you know, this is kind of, found a new little circuit that's a mile that we've been using on the bike, and it's got nice little climbs, some good little descents and some technical turns. So at the same time you're working hard, but you're also practicing the skills, and it's something new and fresh, right? So little things like that, like it can be a repetitive sport. So if you're trying to be mindful as a coach of thinking like, oh, let's change the venue, we go to do a run somewhere else or a different trail, or it just makes a little bit of a difference, I think. You know, and you know, it kind of goes back to my days when I trained. I had sometimes coaches that may be a little less creative, and it was just like same thing all the time. So you kind of knew what you were getting almost every day. And at one point you're just like, wow, okay, so it's the same set, same this, same that. So with this, I'm always trying to, there is going to be some repetition, but if you can mix it up a little bit, you know, then it makes it a little more enjoyable. One thing that's really cool that we actually got last year, and this was thanks to one of our key donors of the team, that we now have 2 bikes per student athlete. So we have a road bike and we actually have a gravel bike. And then that, once again, just takes it to a whole nother level, riding in Papago, and we're going off to other locations on the weekend. But it helps work on your bike skills, and then it's fun. It's totally different. Like you're just on a trail dealing with everything. Sometimes lizards run by or birds, you know, like there's just a lot of different things, but you're working hard, different environment, and it's just enough of a change.
So before we started recording, Coach was saying 31-mile ride this morning, is that correct?
Yeah,
31-mile ride this morning, and he did it with his team. So he's in the heart of training with them at times as well, and obviously your journey to get to this point is rather interesting, starting off as a teenager as a swim coach, and then you got into personal training while also starting to coach triathlon as well. So, you know, give me a bit of background on where it took you to get to Arizona State. I know you have plenty of experience in the Olympic Games as well, 4 different Olympic Games where you were a coach, so very impressive resume. But you found yourself to Tempe, and now you've had a great deal of success here.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'll try to go nutshell with this one, but yeah, you know, it's really interesting. It goes all the way back, I guess, to, you know, high school, where I was, you know, I played a lot of sports, grew up in Canada as a hockey player. But, you know, in some cases, and this was kind of funny, and this maybe will explain a lot, but I'd say it was around maybe grade 9, that physical education teacher took me aside and was like, English, not everyone's cut out to be athletic. Why don't you join band? So that was really like, oh,
That's
okay.
a humbling comment, right?
Exactly. So, and yet again, it was another team that I think I was cut from, even though I was basically just warming benches. So I found cycling. I remember, I lived in the country, used to ride to school anyways, and then I just started to get into it more. And then probably by the time I was 17, it turned out I was pretty good at it, and was ranked, one of the best in my province, and then at one point top 5 in the country. And that's got me really pretty hooked. And it was interesting too, because in me now as a coach, I'd say I definitely like to motivate, but I'm also someone that looks for those diamonds in the rough. I'm also a bit of a nurturer, and I think a lot of that kind of has come from that experience, that basically I found a sport that I was really good at, no thanks to anyone, really. You know what I mean? It was one of those where that back in the day, your physical education teachers, your coaches, you want to think about keeping people in the sport, right? Keeping them engaged, keeping them retained. And, unfortunately, you get too much, I think, in high school where it's more about we need to be competitive, so we cut people, and even my philosophy on the team, that every single person on the team, whether it's the 7 that are competing at our national champs or, the others that aren't, they all get a chance to race. They all get to compete. Every single person always competes through our season. We're always working on their goals, always working on trying to make them better, young people and better athletes. So we always make sure we're moving forward with that.
I got to touch on growing up in Canada and being a hockey player. Have you gone out to Mullet and gotten on the ice?
I haven't skated there yet, no, but I
Okay.
did get a chance to drop the puck there a year.
There you go.
That was awesome. I was actually on Canada Appreciation Day, so that was pretty cool.
Fitting.
Yeah,
Fitting. Absolutely.
Exactly.
I think one of the things that boggles my mind the most about your program's success is you hear it all the time in sports. It's really hard to get to the top, but it's even harder to stay at the top. And it's been so long, since 2016, like I said, where a national title has come every single year. What's the recipe behind that sustaining success at such a high level?
I think I didn't think about it until maybe our 5th or 6th in a row. So I was like, kind of had those, and it was really pretty good. And then every time I'm up on the 6th floor, I'm always reminded, "You're going to do it again, coach?" And then you starts to get in your head, and you're like, "Oh man, wow." But no, same thing. Just like I was saying about our training, take it a session at a time, a day at a time, and a week at a time. I don't get ahead of myself. I just stay right here in the present and the now. Focus on what we can do with the team to have a great session, and then move on to the next session. Really big emphasis on what we do in terms of the work, and then on the other end, because we do train 3 sports and then strength, so that's like our 4th, it's that recovery, staying healthy, really making sure that you have great communication with your student athletes. So you're just really finding out how they're doing, how they're recovering, did they sleep well, all those little things, because you're constantly trying to adjust that training load to get the best out of them, but at the same time, you're really trying to balance the school schedule and everything that they got going on in their lives. And find if you focus on, doing the little things well, it does work out. It sets you up to have the opportunity to be at your best when you compete.
Haven't been thinking about the amount of national titles, but you're running into the Bill Russell and Phil Jackson dilemma. You're running out of fingers for championship.
I do have toes.
Rings. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we can downsize the rings. Last one for you, Coach, and this is a sport that's rapidly growing around the country. What are some of the next steps, for the sport as a whole, that you would like to see triathlon continuing to grow around the U.S. and in Canada and all over North America?
Well, what's really interesting too is that when you kind of look at Olympic extreme sports, like say outside of, triathlon here in college, there's some circuits, and we're definitely getting a lot of the women from a lot of the countries that are coming to college, and those are the circuits they compete in their country, whether it's Canada or over Europe and even here in the States. And so in that Olympic extreme, the governing body, which is our international governing body, is called World Triathlon. So they have these tiers. They have a Conti Cup, then it's a World Cup, and then they go to something called the WTS. And that's all you're kind of like as you're working towards the Olympics. And so we're at this level where once they're out of juniors, which is 19 and under, and they're getting into under 23, they have these Conti Cups that are, some are in Canada, some are in the US, and so we actually do a lot of those competitions outside of our collegiate circuit. So we're really working on them developing, getting, a higher level of competition in these, because a lot of times some of those top level national team athletes do them. Like we had an amazing couple years ago, so like 2022, I believe, was the year that one of the ones in Sarasota, Florida, Amber actually beat Katie Zafaris, who was the Olympic bronze medalist from Tokyo. So I think it was a bit of a shock to her. And Amber got the lead, and then literally she's a great runner, and I think had about a 6-7 second gap, and was just running scared the whole time because she knew there was this Olympic medalist behind her. But,
Right.
you know, it's one of those, you know, Katie was kind of obviously building up and ramping up towards this next Olympic cycle, but it gives them this opportunity to get world ranking points. You know, we've moved Amber up into the top 80 in the world with doing those races as well, and it really helps the development. But what's kind of a cool metric is that, you know, we were probably the only school doing that right in the beginning, then a couple others, and a few more. Now, when you look at a lot of these races, we're almost about, say, 50 to 60% of the actual field are collegiate kids from, you know, South Dakota, Denver, San Fran, TCU, us, U of A. So we are actually seeing, you know, this retention of athletes. We're keeping them in the sport past that junior, 19 and under. We're keeping them in it longer, and I think that we're going to continue. I hope by this next Olympic cycle or the following one that we'll start to see, you know, more and more of these athletes from around the world as well that are coming into college, that are actually getting these opportunities to do these races and do all their NCAA goals while they're also doing their, you know, individual goals and moving up as a world triathlete and towards national teams and worlds and all that fun stuff. So it's definitely, like I said, I've seen, especially I'd say in the last 3 to 4 years, such a huge growth in that, you know, and some of these races, one of them I think was also in 2022 or 2023, where normally the men's field is much larger than the women's, so maybe you get 50 men, 30 women, 35 women kind of thing. We had one race that had a few Olympic medalists in the women's field, and it was something like 49 women and only 36 men, which is amazing. And in that, there was about 27 of the women were all collegiate kids.
Wow.
You know, and so we're really seeing, I think that's a great metric, really seeing a lot of growth, you know. And in that top 10, there was actually 3 collegiate kids, and in that top 20, there was 10. So, you know, pretty amazing. And he had the Olympic gold medalist from Rio was in that race, and then Olympic bronze medalist was also in that race. So pretty good stuff.
Yeah,
so
that shows.
Yeah.
That shows that the future is certainly bright for the sport. LA 2028 will be here before we know it.
I know.
And certainly that will be exciting. But your season is now here as well, September 1st, kicking things off in Mount Shasta, California. Your freshmen will be competing in that one. Coach, thanks a lot for stopping by. Best of luck this year. And now we get the chance to chat with one of your stud athletes. In just a moment, Naomi Ruff joining us, second nationally last year. Coach, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.